I think a couple of days back we kind of figured that we are now due for a mean reversion, and I think I know at least Neophyte took that 3,700 trade. I think after that she closed that trade, but I think somebody else also took that trade. I don't know if that person held on to that trade or not, but this is what was expected to happen, right? To a damn T, it came back down. This is futures, of course. Came back down, hitting the mean. Very likely, if it, but that bounce right here was pretty much expected. Now it bounced. Now, if it does come back, looks like it will come back after this bounce. If it does come back, then we are expecting it to hit right about here, 4037. That reaches, the drill, right? One after another. But the thesis says if it hits the mean, very likely it's going to hit the probability of it hitting the lower inner Bollinger Band are exponential. Lower inner Bollinger Band is sitting at about 4038 on ES. That would translate to about 4028 on SPX, right? So as of now, that's the if it comes back down, that's what we are looking at. And if it comes back down here, that's the mean. If it does breach the mean, then we'll reassess into the downside here. Now, why am I super skeptical about it? Maybe look at this thing right here, right? So it is crossing to the downside. We might get another push to the downside. Fair enough. So this is fine. This is fine. And here, if you look at this chart, this is where that bounce came from, right? This chart was clearly oversold, and hitting a major move in average and clear bounce. Now the bounce could last very well into upper inner Bollinger Band. If that clears, we're gonna go hit all the way up here into the 5 and 8, right? The same drill, no changes at all. And overnight data did help accelerate this push to the downside. And anytime we see this kind of price action, mean standard deviation violation, it warrants for a push to the downside into mean reversion. Now that happened. Now this chart right here, where is that? Right here, oversold conditions. Fair enough. Came back into 5, 8. If that clears, the mean reversion, right? So we know this drill. And this is not actually what I'm watching. I'm watching. We'll go through Apple in a minute, and this is the trade that I'm watching actually. And I don't know why this hasn't matured yet. Give me a second. I'll be opening that trade on this one. Come on, one more. All right. So this is the chart, and if you're watching the global yields, all of those yields have moved up, including German DAX and all that. Now, why this thing hasn't? I don't know if you saw that news where what is his name? uh, Bank of Japan went with I forgot his name, but the Bank of Japan governor is stepping down, and yeah, that was in the cards for quite some time, and they went with somebody who the market likes, right? The Japanese markets like that person, so the Japanese market moved higher, clapping not clapping, but clamping the dollar down. So if you saw the dollar move against all the other currencies, the dollar was pushing up versus yen, right? Yen pushed dollar down. So that is still playing on the dollar side of things. So I think that's one pressure that is keeping this thing down, or else I would have expecting it to clear this number here. And this chart is still not, I'm still not satisfied with what it did give us till 3.71 or something. Yeah, 3.71. I would expect it to go up all the way here, right? Although there is not enough momentum from here, although there is not enough momentum, we would want to see ideally we would have wanted to see it come back down, become all green here, then start to cross to the upside. So that is still not, that's still not in our favor, but still I'm expecting it to hit this number, right? And that means, and then my understanding was the math for me was pretty simple, that this thing will go up into the weekly mean reversion. The US 10 will push up into the mean reversion on the week, and simultaneously you will have the ES or SPX come back down into its daily mean reversion. That was the math. That's what we've been discussing for the past few days. Well, obviously the ES came back down and we'll see Apple in a minute. And Apple followed its path to the downside. So the move into mean reversion on ES and the SPX side of things happened faster than what I was expecting this to do, right? So now if this thing pushes up and goes all the way up here into 3.75 area, then very likely we'll have some more softness in ES and SPX, and also Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin was hitting 24, now came back down. So fair enough. This is the one that I'm watching. It's not doing everything I would expect it to do, but still, fair enough. Um, Global yields are moving up, and this thing is not moving up. Even though if you look at the 2 year, the 2 year is kind of moving up, but 10 year is not. So 10 year is this is the smartest money out there, right? 10 year is controlled by the market. 2 year is controlled by the Fed. So that's the reason you look at the yield curve inversion between the 2 and 10. But by and large, this is what is controlled by the market, and this is the smartest money out there. This money is telling something different story. This money is not being aggressively moving up. The yields are not moving up. So there's some disconnect happening between the what do you call between the rest of the world and the 10 year in the US. There is some disconnect going on. Not sure why. I don't really have the capacity to understand all that that whole reason behind it. However, what I look at net is that Bank of Japan has chosen a governor that Bank of Japan and the Japanese markets like, and Japan market was the only one that was green yesterday. I don't know if you looked at the indices. So Japanese markets were the only one greens yesterday, only one in green yesterday. Rest of it, Kospi, Nikkei was the only green. And besides that, you have the ASX and HSI was actually down 2%, right? Given that, I'm expecting some weakness in Baba today and Baidu as well. So, yeah, so the only green was Nikkei yesterday. And because of the Bank of Japan governor, that was the news that kept it green yesterday. So I think I'm still in favor of this thing moving higher and push up all the way till here, 3.74, 3.75. And should it happen that it moves up, the 10 year moves up into 3.74, 3.75, we'll see some weakness in the risk assets, including Bitcoin. Another thing, watch oil. Oil should have been much more higher here because of two things. Per the report, it says that Russia is actually planning a big offensive in Ukraine. That's reason number one, and the reason number two is Russia is expected to cut output next year by I don't know 500,000 barrels or something. So that news has pushed this thing oil up into 79 plus, and it has came back down now. It should have been much more higher, but somehow it's not. So if oil goes negative today, you can expect some decent downside in SPX, right? So that's one trade that you want to be watching. Slowly, VIX is moving up. Let's put VIX up here. I'm still not going into Apple yet, so we'll get into Apple in a bit. But this is what we need to understand, and we just look at Apple to place trades, right? Oh, come on, this is super slow. Right, so this is why we were watching VIX. This is why we were watching VIX, and we knew VIX was about to go to the upside because of this. And how much of an upside? Very likely is going to probably go hit this number, 2266, and if that clears, about 2290 area, right? And let's look at VIX here, the same data on the week, right about here. Come on, this is super slow. Almost everybody is on some device here. All right, so thing is oversold. This is ideal conditions. Last time we did that, we had this kind of move in VIX. I don't think this kind of move in VIX is expected as of now. However, VIX was pretty oversold and it was bound to bounce. And here it is hitting a pretty decent resistance. Now, if it clears this 50, then I'm expecting it to move up into the 200. This 50 should act as very decent resistance. However, look at this thing here. If it crosses to the upside, then it will very likely clear this number 22, and then we are going to expect it to hit this 200 moving average 2250, 2260. That clears, very likely the mean reversion will happen 2335. Now, now it might take a bit for it to clear here, the 50 moving average in the week. However, if CPI comes in hotter than expected, I am expecting this to easily blow past this 50 moving average and very likely push up all the way here into 2475 or something like that, right? So that's the idea here. Sorry, this line is a brown color line. Right, this is a 100 moving average. And if it clears here, it's going to go hit the 200 moving average. That should again act as pretty decent resistance. And if that clears, then we are looking for a mean reversion, right? And I'll take VIX seriously only if it clears the 200 moving average on the week. Else it'll just keep doing, it'll keep bouncing against this number and start to come back down. So I'll take VIX seriously only if it clears the 200 moving average on the week, and it has potential to clear that. And should 10-year go hit that 3.75 and clear that 3.75, very likely you will see VIX push to the upside, and as a result, you will see SPX push to the downside. Cool thing. Now let's get into Apple. And by the way, ES, we plotted ES, right? And all you need to do is add or no, rather subtract 10 points from ES numbers to get to SPX numbers. Now the 5 to the upside is detached on the day for ES. Very likely it will come back down. If it doesn't, then if the bounce sustains beyond this one standard deviation, then very likely it's going to go hit this number 4107 and definite push to the downside from there, right? If the and then the push might last into the mean again, and per the thesis, if it comes back down to the mean, this will very likely breach to the downside and hit this line right about here, 4037. Let's quickly get into SPX here. Um, so SPX 4070 4062 somewhere about here, somewhere about here. Yeah, SPX will open somewhere about here. Yesterday's lows, probably it will be somewhere about here, right? 4062, somewhere about here, right about here. So I'm expecting SPX to push down. Very likely, I mean, if even if it does bounce initially, I'm expecting SPX to push down right here into this number. And then very likely we'll see a bounce again here, 4050. Again, if the as and when the market opens, these lines will adjust and we'll pick up our levels based on these numbers, right? And the easier trade would be look for a maybe 1 to 1.5% downside, that strike, downside strike. That's a much easier trade to hold, right? 2 weeks out. And let's go into actual problem here. Well, this is Apple's chart. This was a no-brainer, right? Five, the eight, and now the eight breaches. It'll very likely come back into this number 147.80 here. Before that, let's go here. Right. So this line should act as pretty decent support for Apple. Yesterday, it breached that line. Expectation was for it to bounce. I think yesterday it held for quite some time, and finally it breached. And after that, it came back down here. It is holding this number here, 149.30 area. It's holding that. And if that breaches, very likely it's going to come back down into 147.60 area, which is also right about here, right? So expecting this bounce, 200 moving average bounce, if it comes back here, we are expecting a bounce here. By the time it comes back, actually, if it breaches, if it does breach, then I'll look for pretty decent shorting. But till here, I'll be still short, but I'll be cautious, right? Apple come back down here into 200 moving average. That's the expectation, and that's pretty much everybody watching right now on the street. Barring anything, barring any other news coming in, I think Apple will likely move into this number, provided Apple breaches this number right here, which very likely it will. Now let's go here into this chart. This is where things get complicated, right? So this is where you need to manage your trade. This is where not many people understand this, but we do. Apple, same thing, right? And all of this, we understand that it works in cycles. Oversold, overbought, oversold. Same thing, same thing, same thing. Nothing different. So it came back down. Now we are looking for a bounce. If it bounces, we're looking for 148.70 area. That clears, very likely it will hit this line here at about 149.80 area. If that clears, the 5 is sitting right about here, 140, 150. That clears, then very likely it's going to go hit 150.50, right? So all of these are reject points. All of these are reject points. And why are we still looking for that reject? Is that the higher time frame is not agreeing with the lower time frame. Even though the 5 was a bounce spot and 8 was a bounce spot, and now this 100 moving average is a bounce spot. All of those are bounce spots, and on the lower time frame, Apple is getting oversold, and it is hitting a major moving average. So it makes sense for that to bounce. And unless it breaches, comes back down, it reaches this major moving average, I will be still looking for a bounce based on our chart here. Where is that chart? Right here. Right. So this is where things get a little bit complicated. Cool. And let's go. Where is that? Here. So, uh, no, this doesn't make sense. After the market opens, we'll look into this. And why are we still, this will be a bit of a issue today. Mean reversion. I'm expecting a mean reversion today. If Apple gives up after that bounce on the 1 hour, Apple starts to move to the downside. I'm expecting a mean reversion, very likely 40, 50, 40, 45 area. Then we'll look for another bounce. If that breaches, we're looking forward for a push all the way into 40, 20. This is the idea for now. And if I want to sell something, I'll be looking forward to sell. This is a very safe trade to sell something below the 50 here, right? So that's the idea here. Cool. Let's get into where is that? Microsoft. And by the way, UK GDP came in, I think, in line. It was 0%, and the FTSE was hitting all-time highs. It just needed a reason to push to the downside, and that translated into SPX pushing the downside. Nothing major there. Right, Microsoft. This number we knew it was going to go hit there. It was We knew it was going to take a breather. How deep of a breather? Yeah, the game was between this line and this line. Now, if it does breach there, then we're looking for a push into 257. That breaches, we're looking for a push into 252. Might be not a story for today. We'll leave this for 252. We'll leave for CPI day. If CPI comes in hotter than expected, very likely it's going to come back down here and breach that. Very likely it'll come back down into 248. That's the idea with Microsoft to the downside. Let's look at Microsoft right here. Same thing, right? No, this is not rocket science at all. Second standard deviation violation came back into second standard deviation, came back into 5. If that breaches, it will come back into 8, 259.60 area. If that breaches, it's going to come back into this 253, 254 area. Now, here's the thing, right? Just like Apple, everybody is watching the same chart with respect to Microsoft as well. If Apple breaches its 200 moving average, very likely it will push the market down, and by extension, it will push Microsoft down as well. Microsoft pushes down below 8, then very likely there's a bright chance it will come back down and test this 200 moving average at some, maybe not a story for today, unless I'm missing some event somewhere, unless I'm missing something. This is not a story for today for Microsoft. 200 moving average, a test of that, not a story for today for Microsoft. Very likely a bounce here, and if it does breach this number here, then we'll go on to the lower time frame and we'll start reassessing the trade to the downside. Let's see Microsoft here. There you go. Right. And this again works in cycles. Few days back, this is what we saw. Cycle, 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 cycle. Same thing, same thing, same thing, same thing. Nothing new here. So Microsoft, same thing is happening here. Bounce, and we're looking for a hit of this number. That clears right here. 262. If that clears right about here, 263, 38, 263.40. And we want to see Microsoft above this line here, the 50 moving average on the hour. We consistently want to see Microsoft move above this line. So the market remains buoyant, right? And people looking for death, mega death, all that, very likely they're going to be disappointed. Unless I'm missing something else, unless there's some catalyst to the downside, or somebody comes in and says, um, you know, uh, something that I'm not pricing in right now. Unless that happens, I think it's gonna be a push to the upside from here. Uh, right. And what else? Tesla. Tesla, the sentiment indicator. Come on. Right. The sentiment indicator is down right now, so the sentiment is down as well. But I really like this chart. I really like this chart. I'm still in 221. Well, I'm at 226. I think it came back down or something, or I forgot this number and I was looking at a different number for 226. But I'm still sitting at 220, at least 220 with Tesla. Hopefully, I'm going to get this number. I don't know if Apple pushes up, then very likely I'm going to get this number. If Apple doesn't, then it's going to come back down very likely into 187. Breaches that, it's going to come back down into mean 181 long term. Not a story for today. Unless that Apple 200 breaches to the downside, everything will be dragged down to the downside. Let's go Tesla here. Cool. So number is this? There. That's the reason I was looking for 226. Okay. Now it makes sense. I was not crazy. So 226 is coming from this line. Right. Okay. If it comes back down right about here, and it violated the second standard deviation, it paid the price for it. Now it's not really violating the second standard deviation, but this here is oversold, right? Oh, sorry, overbought. So we want to see it calm down, and especially if Apple comes down, I'm expecting it to come back into the five. Right now, the five is sitting at about 198.40, and high chances it will come back into there if, especially if Apple starts to come back down, right? Especially if Apple starts to come back down and Microsoft reaches the eight on the daily, you can expect it to come back into 198 on the day. Right now, the five is sitting at 198. This might change after the open. It might push up a little bit higher, probably around 201 or 202. Then, if that breaches, then next is eight. Until the eight breaches, I'm not looking forward for any meaningful downside on Tesla. However, Tesla is a meaningful indicator, a sentiment indicator. The move, the direction of the move can be spotted by Apple, but the velocity of the move can be pretty much determined by Tesla. And I don't know if you saw the price action yesterday. Till Tesla was holding up, market was moving down, but very slowly. The moment Tesla gave up, the market moved down heavily. Right? That was a clear distinction with respect to Apple and Tesla yesterday. Right. So let's go here with Tesla. I'm expecting the same kind of chart. Oh, this is not oversold. So this number right here, 202, this should act as pretty decent support. That breaches very likely is going to come back down here into this 20160. That breaches very likely 200, right? As of now, not really plotting anything sub this 50 moving average on the hour, but this outcome is pretty much, I think it's sitting there. This outcome, it's pretty much sitting there. Right here, 8 below 21 happened. Sorry, 5 below 8 happened. Now we are expecting a 8 below 21. If it does, 8 below 21 happens, then very likely we're going to see this breach this number right here, 20250, and very likely come back down here into 200. As of now, not plotting anything sub 200. But if that breaches, very likely it's going to hit 199. And then we are going to have to deal with this 5. That's the idea there, and we're looking for a bounce. Cool thing. Anything else in specific we're looking at? Are you seeing it break 4,000 today? I doubt. I doubt 4,000. I doubt 4,000. I doubt. It might come close to that because right here is. We'll look for 1% on the day from where it closed, 40.80 or something. So 1% would be roughly 41 points, and then we'll add on to increments. So if you put at 41, then you're looking at 40 area, and if that reaches, we'll add another about, let's say, another 20 points. So that would be 40.20. It makes sense to look forward for that 40.20 to 40.16, 40.17 area. So if I were to be looking for 2 weeks outputs, depending on Apple, then we are very likely I'll be looking for this strike. I'll be looking for probably around 2%. If no, 2% would be right about till here, right? 2% is for would be give or take about 4,000 on SPX. That's the one that will have more liquidity today, and very likely that's the one will be having more open interest today. And look at the MACD, it's about to cross to the downside, and this should act as pretty decent catalyst, at least to come into the mean, right? And if the mean breaches, or rather the moment the mean breaches, the 4,000 strike might not initially be as profitable, but if and when the mean breaches that 40-45 area, then very likely the 4,000 puts will get exponentially run over, right? The premiums will grow exponentially on this 4,000 strike. I don't think it's going to strike 4,000 today. However, just because the mean is breaching here, the expectation or the IV on that will increase the 4,000, and that's what we want to see happen, right? And the moment that happens, we exit the trade. Cool thing. Anything he is bouncing? Yeah, yeah. It makes sense for it to bounce, right? It makes total sense for it to bounce. Absolutely, absolutely makes sense for it to bounce here. And likelihood, we just discussed this chart. If it clears here, we're going to go hit this number. Very likely, 4088 is where it is expected to hit. 4088, rather, the mean would be at within 4086, 4088. So that would leave us about 4078 to 4076 on SPX. Expecting that open, yeah, that's so right now about 4068 is where the SPX is. If that pushes up 10 points from where it is right now, right about till here, 4088, 4087. So that's the initial trade, I guess. So let's reassess after that. All right, 3 minutes to open. Let's move into